very good day to eSAI International School in Bhubaneswar. My name is Nick Lowe. I'm the British Deputy High Commissioner in Calcutta, and I'm responsible for East India and North East India. Thank you for inviting me. I have to say, it's not how I would like to do this. I would love to be with you, but for reasons we all understand, that's not possible at the moment. What I will do is to promise you that I will come and see you in person in the not too distant future. So it's great to join you at the eSAI International School Model United Nations 2020. And I thank you for bringing together, I understand, 750 people from no fewer than 11 different countries to participate in this event. This is important. It's important for reasons I'll go into as I talk to you. It shows your commitment to building understanding, to building mutual comprehension, and to building cooperation between different countries. And it also shows the innovative use of technology, which is going to be so important as we go forward. We need to be creative. We need to do things in new ways to address the problems we face as a global community. The United Nations, diplomats, what does it make you think of? When you hear about them on the news, what do you think of? Wars, crises, natural disasters, terrorist incidents, problems. It doesn't have to be like that. So look, I want to start off with a message that yes, as a global community, we do face a lot of problems, but it's not hopeless. And there is also a lot that we can celebrate, that we as a global community have done together. Global deaths from conflict are at a 7-year low. Every year, we lift 20 million people around the world out of extreme poverty. We've never had a higher proportion of people on the planet who are literate, and life expectancy is growing the whole time. We now have a vaccine against Ebola, which is 97% effective, and others will follow. Who would have thought that was possible just a very few years ago? Advances in immunology are transforming the prospects of people suffering cancer, and that is going to gather pace in the coming years. More people live in democracies than ever before, something like 4 billion people around the world. And we're seeing grassroots pressure from ordinary people on issues like protecting the environment, biodiversity, looking after our oceans, pressure governments into showing more ambition. A growing middle class around the world will create opportunity for everyone. And advances in technology promise so much. The management consulting McKinsey, for example, has estimated that artificial intelligence alone will be adding 1.2% to global growth every single year by 2030. Now, none of that has happened by accident, and none of that has happened through the actions of one country alone. All of that has been produced by countries working together. Now, inevitably, I'm now going to talk about some of the issues that we face as a global community, but do bear that in mind, that by acting together, by the community of nations acting together, we can and have made great things happen. So no one country or one group of countries can hope to solve the problems that we face as a global community in 2020 and in the years ahead. And that's why I'm so pleased to be able to speak to you today. We need all 11 countries represented, possibly 12 countries with my own, to be working together. And we need the vast majority of the other countries, the 192 countries that make up our global community, to be acting together within a rules-based international system. That is what lies at the heart of my country's approach to foreign policy. Global solutions for global problems. A big tent, if you like, where we are all together United Kingdom in the middle of that tent, India, our other partners, your countries, by our side, working together to address collectively the problems that we face. The world has changed a great deal since I was your age. When I was at school, I probably wouldn't have known what an existential threat was. It's a threat to your existence. If someone had asked me, I would probably have said the Soviet Union. I lived during the Cold War as a schoolboy and as a university student, and was aware that the Soviet Union had the largest armed forces the world had ever seen, the biggest nuclear arsenal the world had ever seen, spent more money on defense than any other country on the planet, and had a hostile expansionist ideology. It had invaded Hungary in 1956, Czechoslovakia in 1968, and appeared to present a threat to me, to my family, to my country. The Soviet Union has gone. Very few people miss it. What it's been replaced by is a much, much more complex range of threats, of challenges that we need to face together. It is not a single country, it's been a single group of countries. These are largely problems that have come about as a result of human activity. Now, the most obvious one, and the one you're all going to be aware of, is climate change. And I'll speak about that very shortly. But the fact that I'm having to do this on the other end of the camera is because of coronavirus disease 19, COVID-19. And I think COVID-19 gives a very good example of what modern diplomacy is all about. COVID-19 has clearly caused a tremendous amount of death and of suffering. It's changed the way we live our lives. It touches each and every one of us. Its economic consequences threaten to undo some of the good news I gave you at the beginning of this talk, certainly in terms of people losing their jobs and people suffering poverty. It also shows what happens when man's relationship with nature breaks down, and there are lessons in that for what we do going forward and how we respond. But it also shows the power of the global community when we act together. The United Kingdom and India are at the centre of that effort. You'll almost certainly know that 2 of the vaccines that hold most hope are being developed by British universities, Oxford University, Imperial College London, 2 of the top 9 universities in the world, and my country is absolutely committed to making sure those vaccines, if and when they prove to be effective, as we hope they will be available to countries all around the world. India, what the Honourable Prime Minister Narendra Modi has described as the pharmacy of the world, and we're delighted to be working very closely with the Indian Institute of Serology in Pune to bring those vaccines online as quickly as possible. Now, all the threats and challenges posed by COVID-19 are magnified many times over by climate change. COVID-19 is not an existential threat. We will get through this. Climate change could be an existential threat, and we need to act, and we need to act urgently. It's a threat, it's a challenge that hasn't gone away because of COVID. If we look at what's happened since COVID really sprang to our attention at the beginning of the year, February, the United Kingdom had its wettest February ever. We've been keeping records for almost 200 years. May, surface water temperatures in the tropical Atlantic, the tropical Indian Ocean, the tropical Pacific were the warmest ever. Here in West Bengal, in Calcutta, we had the most ferocious cyclone for almost 300 years. And those of you, in addition, those of you in Bhubaneswar, will need no reminding about the power of cyclones. Just look what happened in Puri because of Cyclone Fani this time last year. The United Kingdom has a special responsibility on climate change. In November of next year, we will host COP26, the Conference of Parties 26, if you like, the Climate Change Summit. And the world urgently needs governments of all countries to come together and show much greater ambition to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions and to bring the Paris climate change agreement into effect. We in the United Kingdom are absolutely committed to that, and we're working very closely with our friends and colleagues in India to make that happen. India itself is showing tremendous ambition. The International Solar Alliance and the Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure show India too is walking the walk as well as talking the talk. We need to do much more. The world, frankly, is at a tipping point. As we build back from coronavirus disease 19, we need green, clean, resilient technology. What we mustn't do is lock in the polluting traditional technologies that have put us where we are now. This can be done. At the beginning of the speech, I gave you some examples of the good man acting together has done in recent times to make the world a better place. Let me say one or two things about my own country, because you might look at the United Kingdom and say, well, you know, you guys have had your industrial revolution, you've released lots of greenhouse gases. Who are you to talk to us about this? Well, what we have done since 1990, we have managed to grow our economy by 75%, and yet at the same time reduce our greenhouse gas emissions by 43%. It can be done. All around the world, in something like 3/4 of the globe, renewable energy is now cheaper than traditional fossil fuel energy. The technology is there, and we need to work together to make that a reality for everyone. If we don't, we will do irreparable damage to this precious planet of blues and greens which we share together. There are other areas, other global challenges where the same thing applies. Antimicrobial resistance. Microbes, bugs, bacteria have grown increasingly resistant to the antibiotics that we've depended on for decades. That's because mankind has abused them. They've been overprescribed, and they've been used in animal husbandry. They've been used to make animals grow faster, come to market earlier, and improve our animal health. That was not what they were intended for. And we're finding more and more bacteria that simply do not respond to antibiotics when they are prescribed. That can't go on. If it does go on, by 2050 it's estimated more people will die of opportunistic infections, which at the moment we can easily treat, than die of cancer. That is not the world I want. I know it's not the world you want. It's not the world you want for you. It's not the world you want for your children. Only by acting together as a global community, by limiting the use of antibiotics to cases where they really are necessary, and by developing new antibiotics, can we address that. Poverty and the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. This is one I really do want to talk about, because we are not a model United Nations. We must eradicate poverty. It's what we've committed to do as a global community by the year 2030. We need to do that because poverty creates instability and conflict. Poverty creates irregular migration, which we're seeing all around the world now. Poverty creates a fertile recruitment ground for terrorists and for criminals. And we must eradicate poverty because it's a moral duty. My country has a values-based foreign policy. India does too. I'm sure the foreign policies of many of the countries who've got their young people listening today the same thing. This is our moral duty, to eliminate poverty, to consign it to history, to do so forever. Sadly, the list of global challenges goes on and on. Human trafficking, proliferation of weapons and materials for mass destruction, the illegal trade in wildlife that threatens to do so much damage to our biodiversity. All of those challenges no one country can address on its own. No group of countries can address on their own. I've given you a lot of homework, haven't I? Because it's going to be your responsibility to address these problems, to find solutions to these problems, and you can do so by working together. over the next day or so in your Model United Nations, in the longer term by doing diplomacy for real. And I hope that some of you listening to me have been inspired to do that. I am an ordinary guy. My dad wasn't a diplomat, my mum wasn't. They're ordinary people from an ordinary suburb of South London. And if at the end of this Model United Nations we've inspired just one or two of you to become diplomats and to work on these great global issues, then it will have been 2 or 3 days very well spent. I wish you luck, and once again I leave you with the message, not only that all of this, okay, it's tough, it's difficult, it's challenging, but it is doable, it's not desperate. And you will find no firmer friend, no firmer ally, no firmer partner than my own country, the United Kingdom, in this global approach. Let us together be a force for good, as we are with India. Let us be a force for good for all your countries in making our world a better place. I thank you very much indeed for listening to me. I thank our friends at eSAIMUN International School for making this event possible, and I reiterate my promise that I'll come and see you for real just as soon as it's safe to do so. I wish you all the very best indeed. Thank you.